In a distant future where humans had learned to live among other intelligent species across the stars, alliances were no longer just made through politics or trade, but also through something far more personal: marriages. It was meant to create trust between worlds, to bind species together in ways treaties never could. Among the many planets where humans had settled, one was ruled by the Vyari, a proud alien race known for their beauty, intelligence, and secrecy. It was here that Ethan, a young human from Earth, found himself standing in the middle of a grand ceremonial hall, staring at the alien woman he had been chosen to marry. From the moment Ethan stepped into the vast golden chamber, he sensed something strange in the air. High above, luminous crystals floated like captured stars, casting soft blue light across the alien architecture. Hundreds of Vyari nobles watched from the balconies, their faces calm and unreadable. At the center of it all stood Lyra, the alien bride-to-be, tall and graceful with skin like pale silver and eyes that shimmered faintly like liquid glass. Everything about her looked regal and distant, and yet Ethan could not shake the uneasy feeling rising inside him. He had agreed to this marriage because Earth needed an alliance with the Vyari to survive. There had been whispers of other alien empires growing hostile, and the humans on this side of the galaxy were vulnerable. A marriage to one of the Vyari Council's daughters was supposed to guarantee peace. But no one had told him about the condition until now. As the ceremony began, Lyra's father, the High Council, stepped forward. He was a towering figure draped in flowing silver robes, his voice deep and commanding as it echoed through the hall. He welcomed Ethan into their family and then, almost casually, announced the clause buried deep within the marriage contract. As part of this union, the consul said slowly, his strange golden eyes fixed on Ethan, "You will take responsibility for the education of my younger daughter, Nayla. You will teach her the ways of human males, your instincts, your bonds, your desires. It is necessary for her growth." The hall was silent, the words hanging heavy in the air. Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. Teach your younger sister about human instincts? What kind of education was this supposed to be? Lyra stood perfectly still, her expression cold and distant, as if the condition was not open for discussion. Ethan searched her face for any sign of reassurance, but found none. He opened his mouth to object, to ask why such a thing was necessary, but the consul's gaze silenced him. After a long moment, Ethan nodded carefully. "I understand," he said, though every part of him screamed that he didn't. It was only after the ceremony ended that Ethan finally saw Nyla for the first time. She stood near one of the crystalline pillars at the edge of the chamber, half hidden in the shadows, as though she was not meant to be seen. She looked younger than Lyra, her features softer, her silver hair falling loosely around her shoulders. Her pale violet eyes met Ethan's for just a second, and in them, he saw something he hadn't expected: curiosity, sharp and bright, as if she had been waiting for this moment. But there was something else too, something deeper that he could not name, and it unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Later that evening, after the endless ceremonies and formal greetings, Ethan was taken to his new quarters inside the Vyari Council's palace. The chamber was vast, filled with strange alien designs carved into the walls, faintly glowing patterns that pulsed softly like a heartbeat. He sat on the edge of the bed, his mind heavy with unease. Why would they want him to teach Nayla about humans? Why specifically about males? None of it made sense. If the Vyari were truly as advanced and intelligent as everyone claimed, surely they didn't need him for something so intimate. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. When he opened it, Nayla was standing there, her hands folded nervously in front of her. She looked smaller up close, more fragile than he had expected. "They said I should come to you," she said softly, her voice melodic but hesitant, as though she wasn't sure how to speak the words. "They said, you will teach me." "Ethan." hesitated, unsure how to respond. He wanted to ask her what she knew about this arrangement, whether she understood why her family demanded it. But before he could speak, she added something that froze him where he stood. "I don't know what it means." "To feel," she whispered. "They said you could show me." There was no trace of mockery in her voice, no manipulation, only a quiet honesty that unsettled him even more. He realized then that Neela wasn't just curious about humans. She had never been allowed to understand emotions at all. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to make sense of his strange new life. Each morning, he and Neela met in one of the palace's quiet chambers, far from the watchful eyes of the Vayari nobles. He started with simple explanations: how humans formed bonds, how trust and love shaped their choices, how instincts drove them to protect one another. Neela listened with wide, unblinking eyes, absorbing every word as though she had been starved for this knowledge her entire life. But even as he taught her, Ethan began to notice unsettling details. Small, hovering drones appeared at the edges of the room during their lessons, their lenses faintly glowing as they recorded every word and movement. When he asked about them, Nyla only lowered her gaze and whispered, "They're always watching." At night, Ethan lay awake in the grand but cold palace chambers, replaying everything in his mind. The clause in the contract, the drones, Nyla's strange isolation. None of it fit together, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt like he was being pulled into something he didn't understand. One evening, after another long session with Nyla, she lingered at the doorway instead of leaving. Her voice was soft but unsteady when she finally spoke. "They didn't choose you because of Lyra," she said without looking at him. "They chose you because of me." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, she turned and vanished down the corridor, leaving him alone in the quiet alien palace with more questions than answers. And as he stood there in the flickering blue light of the crystalline walls, Ethan realized something deep inside him. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't just about a marriage or an alliance. It was about something far more dangerous, and he was trapped at the center of it. Ethan woke early the next day, his thoughts still tangled from the strange words Neela had whispered the night before. The palace was silent, its tall crystal walls glowing faintly in the soft light of morning. He looked out over the alien city from his chamber window, seeing the endless towers rising like silver spears into the sky and the distant curve of the horizon shimmering under the twin suns. It was beautiful, but that beauty felt cold, like the smile of someone hiding a secret. He could not stop thinking about Nyla's warning. "They didn't choose you because of Lyra. They chose you because of me." Those words refused to leave his mind. What did they want from her? Why bring him here? Why force this strange condition on him? Before he could untangle his thoughts, the door opened and Neela stepped inside. She was quiet as always, moving like a shadow. Her pale silver skin caught the soft light, and her violet eyes seemed brighter today. But behind them was a kind of nervous energy he had not seen before. "They said we must begin early," she said softly. Ethan nodded and motioned for her to sit. Today's lesson was supposed to be about human emotions, trust, love, and instinct. He thought it would be simple, but the way Neela looked at him made it clear this was no ordinary conversation. "You asked me yesterday why humans form bonds," Ethan began, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's because we need connection. We aren't meant to live alone. We find people we care about, and we choose to protect them, no matter what." Neela tilted her head slightly, her silver hair brushing her shoulders as she studied him with intense curiosity. "And what happens," she asked softly, "if you are told who to care about instead of choosing for yourself?" The question hit Ethan harder than he expected. He thought about Lyra, his new bride, who barely spoke to him, whose coldness seemed less like dislike and more like distance, as if she were a stranger bound to him by politics, not choice. He thought about Neela herself, trapped by her family, Never allowed to feel anything real until now. You can't force real connection, Ethan said quietly. You can make rules. You can make contracts. But love isn't something you can control. For a long moment, Neela just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly she whispered, I think that's why they brought you here. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, a faint hum filled the room. He glanced up and noticed one of the small drones hovering silently in the corner, its glass lens glowing faintly. He had grown used to their presence during their lessons, but today something about it unsettled him more than usual. They're always watching us, he said, keeping his voice low. Nyla's gaze dropped to the floor. They want to know how we react, she said almost too quietly to hear. They want to see if I change, Ethan frowned. Change? Into what? But Neela said nothing, and the silence that followed was heavier than words. Over the next few days, Ethan began to notice more signs that something was deeply wrong. Each time he spoke with Nyla, her curiosity grew, but so did her fear. He saw it in the way she glanced at the walls, as though expecting someone to burst in at any moment. He also noticed how cold and distant Lyra remained, barely acknowledging his presence except during official events. When he finally tried to speak with her one evening, asking why her family had placed this strange condition on him, she gave him a look that chilled him to his core. Do what they ask, she said softly, her voice steady but her eyes full of something unspoken. Don't question. It's safer that way. Safer for who? Ethan wanted to ask, but before he could, she turned and walked away, leaving him alone with more doubts than answers. One evening, as the twin suns sank low and the sky burned in shades of red and gold, Ethan found Nyla waiting for him in the garden courtyard. The air was warm and still, and faint streams of light spilled between tall glass-like pillars that rose around them like silent sentinels. She looked nervous, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. They don't like it when I come here without permission. Then why are you here? Ethan asked gently. She hesitated for a moment, then met his gaze with a strange determination he had never seen in her before. Because I need to know something. Humans, you choose who you love, right? It's not decided for you? Yes, Ethan said softly. It's our choice. Neela nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful, almost sad. Then why don't I have that choice? The question hung between them like a blade, and Ethan didn't know how to answer. He wanted to tell her that she should have that freedom, that she deserved it as much as anyone. But he also knew they were trapped in a place where choices were illusions. Suddenly, Neela stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ethan, you have to understand something. This isn't just about me learning human ways. They're studying us. Every word, every reaction, every feeling I show, it's all recorded. They're trying to see if I can. She hesitated, as if even speaking the words was dangerous. If I can bond. Ethan froze, the meaning sinking in slowly. Bond with me? Neela nodded silently, her violet eyes glimmering in the fading light. For a long time neither of them spoke. Somewhere in the distance, faint mechanical sounds echoed, like the hum of hidden machinery beneath the palace walls. The more Ethan thought about it, the more trapped he felt. He wasn't here because of politics, or even because of Lyra. He was here because they needed him for something far stranger and far more personal than he had ever imagined. Later that night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the strange glowing patterns etched into the ceiling of his chamber. Everything about this place felt wrong now. The silence of the palace, the coldness of his new wife, the way Neela's family watched their every move. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was a piece in some grand experiment he didn't understand. The next day, during another lesson, Neela was unusually quiet. She kept glancing toward the drones, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to focus on his words. Finally, when the last drone floated away, she leaned close and whispered urgently, "Ethan, they're moving to the next stage soon. If you don't want to be a part of it, you have to leave. But if you stay, nothing will ever be the same." Ethan felt a cold shiver run through him. "What's the next stage?" he asked. Before Neela could answer, the door slid open and two guards stepped inside, tall and silent in their gleaming silver armor. One of them spoke in a flat, mechanical voice. "It is time," he said simply. "For what?" Ethan demanded, standing quickly. Neither guard answered. Instead, they gestured for him to follow. Neela gripped his wrist tightly, her eyes wide with fear, but the guards pulled her back, keeping her behind as they led Ethan down a long, dimly lit corridor deep into the heart of the palace. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and Ethan began to hear faint rhythmic sounds, the slow, steady hum of hidden machines, the low vibration of power thrumming through the walls. Finally, they stopped before a towering black door dot as it slid open. A voice from inside spoke calmly, almost pleasantly. "Welcome, Ethan," it said. "Phase 2 begins now." Ethan stepped inside, his heart pounding, and as the door closed behind him, he realized there was no turning back. Ethan stood frozen as the massive black door slid shut behind him, trapping him inside a cold, dimly lit chamber deep beneath the palace. The walls here were different from the rest of the grand structure above. Instead of smooth silver stone, these were lined with pulsating veins of blue light, humming faintly like a living heartbeat. A strange metallic scent filled the air, and the quiet was broken only by the low, rhythmic thrum of hidden machines working somewhere beyond the walls. At the center of the chamber stood a large circular platform surrounded by hovering consoles. The High Consul, Lyra and Neela's father, stood waiting, flanked by silent VR scientists dressed in dark robes. The consul's golden eyes caught the glow of the blue lights, and when he finally turned to face Ethan, his expression was unreadable. "You are probably confused," the consul said calmly, his deep voice echoing softly through the chamber. "You wonder why we brought you here, why we chose you out of all humans. You deserve to know the truth. Or at least part of it." Ethan clenched his fists but stayed silent, his gaze shifting between the hovering consoles, the silent scientists, and the strange alien machines humming around him. "Our species," the consul began slowly, "is dying. Not in body, but in spirit. The Vayari are losing something vital, something your kind still possesses. We cannot form natural bonds anymore. We no longer feel love the way we once did. Our instincts are fading, our emotions hollowed by centuries of controlled breeding and intellectual refinement." He paused for a moment, studying Ethan carefully before continuing. "You humans," he said softly, "still burn with passion, with attachment, with chaos. You protect those you love, you choose. And that," his golden eyes glimmered faintly, "is why you are here." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "You want me to teach Neela how to feel?" "Not just teach her," the consul replied. "We need to know if it is possible for one of us to truly bond with one of you. If she succeeds, if she learns, then perhaps our entire species can be saved." Ethan stared at him in shock. He thought of Nyla's innocent curiosity, her endless questions about human emotions, her soft whispers when she said she didn't know what it meant to feel. Now he understood why. She wasn't just curious, she had been raised without emotion, without choice, without freedom. She was part of an experiment, and he was the test subject. "You used me," Ethan said slowly, his voice tight with anger. "You misunderstand," the consul said with a faint smile. "You are not a prisoner. Ethan, you are the key." Before Ethan could reply, the chamber doors slid open and Neela entered, escorted by two silent guards. Her wide violet eyes flickered between Ethan and the consul, confusion and fear mingling on her face. She looked smaller than ever beneath the towering machines and cold lights. Fragile and out of place, yet there was something unspoken in her expression. She already suspected everything. They didn't tell me everything, she whispered, looking directly at Ethan. I thought this was only about learning. But it's not, is it? Ethan shook his head slowly. No, Nyla, it's more than that. They want to change you. To change your whole kind. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her gaze hardened, and she turned to her father. And what if I don't want this? The consul's expression didn't change. This isn't about what you want. It's about survival. Without this, our people will fade into extinction. Nayla's hands trembled as she clenched them into fists, her usually soft voice sharp and unsteady. Then maybe extinction is better than being someone else's experiment. The room went silent. Even the machine seemed to hum more softly as the words settled in the cold air. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, placing himself slightly between Nayla and the consul. She's not just a subject, he said firmly. She's a person. You can't force her to do this. The consul's golden gaze turned icy. Be careful, human, he said slowly. You were brought here because you were willing to serve our needs. Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Before Ethan could respond, one of the scientists approached, holding a sleek device covered in alien symbols. Phase 2 is ready, the scientist said softly. The consul nodded. Begin. The guards moved toward Ethan and Nayla, but Ethan quickly stepped back, pulling Nayla with him. What are you doing? He demanded. We need to test proximity response, the scientist explained calmly. Your emotional patterns, her instinctive reactions, nothing harmful. Unless you resist. Ethan's heartbeat quickened, and Nayla's grip on his arm tightened as the guards slowly closed in. Every instinct in him screamed to fight, but he forced himself to stay still. They were outnumbered, surrounded, trapped deep beneath the palace. The scientist activated the device. And suddenly the lights in the chamber dimmed. A strange vibration filled the air, pressing against Ethan's chest like invisible weight. Nayla gasped softly, her breathing quick and shallow, and when Ethan looked at her, he saw something change in her eyes, a flicker of emotion, raw and unrestrained, like a door had been forced open inside her. She stumbled forward, clutching his sleeve tightly. Ethan, she whispered, her voice shaking. I feel it. I feel everything. The device emitted a rising hum as alien data scrolled rapidly across the consoles. But before the scientists could record more, the lights suddenly flared and alarms began blaring through the chamber. The consul turned sharply toward one of the scientists. What happened? Unexpected response. The scientist stammered, staring at the readouts. Her bond index is too high. It's overloading the system. The hovering drones above them sparked and fell from the air, crashing against the cold floor. Nayla cried out, clutching her head, her body trembling as though waves of sensation flooded through her all at once. Ethan held her, shielding her from the chaos around them, and looked up at the consul with fierce anger. You're hurting her, he shouted. Shut it down. The consul hesitated, his jaw tight, but finally gestured sharply. The scientist deactivated the device, and the heavy pressure in the room faded instantly. Nayla slumped against Ethan, her breathing ragged, her violet eyes bright with tears. She's reacting too quickly, one of the scientists muttered. Her response to the human subject is stronger than projected. If this continues, we'll lose control. Ethan glared at them. Then maybe you shouldn't have tried to control her in the first place. For the first time, the consul looked uncertain. His perfect composure cracked, if only slightly. He dismissed the scientists with a wave, leaving only himself. Ethan and Nayla in the chamber. You were never supposed to bond this strongly. This fast, he said quietly, almost to himself. If the council learns of this, They'll see her as a threat. And you, he paused, his golden gaze locking on Ethan. They will not let you leave. Ethan understood now that they weren't just studying them. They were testing them, measuring them, preparing to decide whether humans and Vayari could ever truly be more than political partners. But if Nyla's rapid reaction frightened even her own people, then they wouldn't just end the experiment. They might end her. As they left the chamber, Nyla clung to Ethan's arm, her silent trembling speaking louder than words. He led her back to the palace gardens, where faint streams of water reflected the twin moons above. I don't want to be part of this, she whispered finally, her voice breaking. I don't want them to decide who I am or what I feel, Ethan. I want to choose. Ethan looked at her, his jaw tightening as resolve burned in his chest. Then we'll find a way, he said softly. I won't let them control you. But even as he said it, he knew the walls of the palace were closing in around them. The guards were watching. The drones were always near. The council would act if they thought the experiment had failed. Somewhere deep inside the palace, behind locked doors and silent corridors, plans were already shifting. Ethan and Nyla had changed something they weren't meant to change, and the Vayari would not allow it to go unchallenged. The first phase had ended. The real danger was only beginning. The palace was silent that night, but Ethan could feel danger hiding in the shadows. Every corridor seemed darker than before. Every flickering light carried a sense of warning, and every soft hum of alien machinery whispered the same message inside his head. They are watching you. Nyla had barely spoken since the failed test earlier that day. She sat by the tall crystal window in Ethan's chamber, her violet eyes fixed on the glowing alien city beyond, where silver towers reached into the sky under the pale light of the twin moons. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap, and Ethan could see the quiet tremble in her fingers. They know, she said softly without looking at him. The way I reacted, it's too strong. The council will see me as a threat now. Ethan knelt beside her, keeping his voice steady even though his chest felt tight. Then we leave, he said. Before they decide what to do with us. Nyla turned to him slowly, her eyes widening at the thought. Leave? She whispered as if the word itself was forbidden. Ethan, no one leaves the council's palace without permission. The city is surrounded by security drones. There are guards at every gate. Even if we escaped, where would we go? Anywhere, Ethan said firmly. Anywhere but here. If we stay, they'll control you forever. They'll control us both. Nyla hesitated, fear clouding her expression, but she didn't argue. That silence told Ethan everything he needed to know. She was terrified, but she trusted him. Later, that night, when the palace corridors had fallen quiet, Ethan took Nyla's hand and led her through the narrow servant passages hidden behind the grand halls. The walls here were different, rougher, less polished, like the ancient bones of the palace itself. Strange symbols glimmered faintly on the stone, their meaning long forgotten even by the Vayari who now ruled this place. As they moved silently through the dimly lit tunnels, Nyla whispered, I used to come here as a child before they locked these passages. My mother told me they were built long ago, before the council took power. I never thought I'd be using them to run away. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. We'll make it out, Nyla, I promise. But his promise was fragile, built on hope rather than certainty. Every step deeper into the labyrinth brought new sounds, the distant hum of drones, the faint echo of boots against metal floors above them. Somewhere far behind, he was sure alarms had already been triggered. They finally reached an old maintenance chamber near the lower levels of the palace. A massive steel door led to the docks where small transport ships waited, and for a moment Ethan thought they might actually have a chance. But when he tried to open the panel, a soft pulse of light revealed a locked security seal. Nyla stepped forward, her slender fingers moving across the strange alien interface. "I can override this," she whispered. "But once I do, the council will know we're trying to leave." Ethan glanced at her and saw the determination in her face. For the first time since he had met her, there was no hesitation, no quiet. Fear. She wanted freedom as much as he did. "Do it," he said. She closed her eyes briefly, taking a slow breath before her hands danced quickly across the panel. Sparks of light flickered beneath her touch, alien symbols scrolling rapidly on the display until finally a soft hiss echoed through the chamber, and the heavy door slid open. Beyond it lay the docking bay, vast and silent, with rows of sleek, silver transport ships resting under soft blue lights. For a brief, fragile moment, Ethan felt hope bloom in his chest. Then the alarms began to scream. From the far side of the bay, guards in silver armor poured in, their weapons glowing faintly, with strange energy. Drones descended from above, their spinning lenses locking onto the two figures standing near the door. A calm, cold voice echoed through the docking bay, amplified by hidden speakers. "Subject Nyla and human Ethan, you are violating council law. Surrender immediately, or you will be terminated." Ethan grabbed Nyla's hand and pulled her behind a stack of metal crates as bolts of bright energy sizzled through the air where they had been standing moments ago. The docking bay filled with the sharp hum of charging weapons and the screech of security. Drones closing in. Nyla pressed her back against the cold metal, her breath coming fast and shallow. "We can't fight them," she whispered. "There are too many." "Then we don't fight," Ethan said quickly, scanning the bay for an opening. His eyes locked on a smaller vessel at the far end, partially hidden behind a cluster of cargo containers. It was lightly guarded, probably used for short-range transport, exactly what they needed. "See that ship?" Ethan pointed. "We get to it, and we're gone." Nyla nodded, fear in her eyes but trust in her expression. Together they moved low and fast, darting between crates and shadows as bolts of energy scorched the air around them. The hum of drones grew louder, and Ethan could hear the metallic click of armored boots closing in from every direction. They reached the vessel, just as a group of guards rounded the corner. Ethan slammed his hand against the hatch release, and the door slid open with a hiss. He pushed Nyla inside and followed quickly, sealing the hatch behind them. Inside, the cockpit glowed with soft alien lights, panels alive with strange symbols and shifting displays. Ethan slid into the pilot's seat, scanning the unfamiliar controls with desperate focus. "You know how to fly this?" Nyla asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "But I'm about to learn." He activated the engine, and the ship came alive with a deep, resonant hum. Outside, the guards shouted commands, and the docking bay filled with the shriek of alarms. Suddenly, the ship shook violently as energy bolts slammed into its hull. Warning symbols flashed red across the displays. "Ethan," Nyla whispered, gripping the seat. "We have to go now." He found what looked like the launch control and slammed his hand down. The ship roared as its engines flared, and with a blinding burst of light, it shot forward, smashing through a barrier of drones and tearing out of the docking bay into the open night sky. For a few seconds, the world outside was nothing but streaks of silver towers and burning light. Then the city fell away beneath them, replaced by the vast darkness of the alien skies. But the danger wasn't over. Behind them, multiple ships detached from the palace. Docks, their sleek forms glowing under the moons as they accelerated in pursuit. The comm system crackled to life with the cold voice of the consul himself. "Ethan, Nyla, stop this madness now. You cannot escape us. You belong to the council." Ethan muted the transmission and pushed the ship harder, feeling the controls vibrate beneath his hands as they shot past the city's edge and into the open void above. Nyla sat beside him, her pale face illuminated by the glowing panels. Her violet eyes were wide, but there was something different in them now, a quiet strength replacing the fear. "They'll never let us go," she said softly. "Then we make them," Ethan replied, determination hardening his voice. "We're not experiments. We're not theirs to control. We decide what happens next." Suddenly, an alert flashed across the panel, a blockade ahead. A wall of Council defense ships hovered above the atmosphere, their weapons trained directly on them. Ethan's breath caught, his hands tightening around the controls. Behind them, the Council's pursuit ships closed in fast. Ahead, the blockade stood ready to destroy them. Nyla reached over and touched his hand gently, her voice steady. "Despite the danger, whatever happens," she whispered, "we choose it together." Ethan nodded slowly, his heart pounding as he prepared for what came next. The escape had begun, but the real fight for freedom was only just starting. The stars stretched endlessly before them, sharp and cold like a million watching eyes. Ethan gripped the controls of the small transport ship as if his strength alone could carry them past the wall of Council blockade. Ships waiting ahead. Behind them, the chasing fleet drew closer every second, their weapons glowing brighter as they prepared to strike. The alien sky outside the cockpit shimmered with strange energy currents, and the twin moons hung low on the horizon, casting a pale silver glow across the dark expanse. Every sound inside the ship was magnified, the low hum of the engines, the faint hiss of air cycling through the vents, and Neela's quiet, steady breathing beside him. "They've locked onto us," Neela whispered, reading the flashing symbols on the control panel. "If we try to pass through, they'll fire." Ethan stared at the blockade ahead, a formation of massive warships, each bristling with weapons, capable of vaporizing their tiny vessel in seconds. There was no open path, no weakness to exploit. It was a trap. He clenched his jaw, thinking quickly. Running wasn't an option anymore. If they surrendered, the Council would separate them forever and turn Neela into an experiment again. If they fought, they'd die. But somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew there had to be another way. "Can you link into their systems?" he asked. Suddenly, turning to Nyla. She blinked in surprise. "What?" "No one hacks into the Council's core. It's impossible." "Maybe for anyone else," Ethan said, his voice low but certain. "But not for you." Neela hesitated, her violet eyes narrowing slightly as if she could already see the path he was imagining. Her species had always been connected to technology, in ways humans couldn't understand, a fusion of mind and machine. She had been raised under strict Council control, but Ethan had seen what she could do when she pushed beyond their limits. Finally, she nodded slowly, placing her hand on the glowing interface between them. "I can try. But if they detect me, they'll trigger a full override and lock us out completely." "Then we don't get detected," Ethan said firmly. Neela closed her eyes, her breathing slowing as streams of alien code lit up the console. Symbols Ethan couldn't comprehend cascaded across the screens while faint ripples of energy pulsed through the cockpit. Outside, the blockade ships hovered silently, their weapons waiting to unleash destruction the moment the order came. Minutes passed, but each one stretched endlessly in Ethan's mind. Then Nyla gasped softly, her body tensing as though she had touched something forbidden. "They're using a mind-link security system," she whispered. "I can see their commands before they send them. I can change them." "Then do it," Ethan urged. Nyla's fingers moved in patterns Ethan couldn't follow, her thoughts diving deep into encrypted Council networks. Sweat glistened on her pale skin, and her lips trembled slightly with the strain. Suddenly, outside the viewport, the closest warship shifted its formation, drifting slowly out of alignment. Then another followed. Then another. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're making them move." Nyla nodded weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm rewriting their orders." For the first time since their escape began, hope sparked like fire in Ethan's chest. If Nyla could control the blockade, they might actually survive this. But just as the last ship began to move, a sharp alarm cut through the cockpit. The pursuing fleet had caught up, and one of the larger vessels fired a warning shot. A beam of white energy slicing past their ship so close that the entire cabin shook violently. "They know what we're doing," Nyla said breathlessly. "I can't hold this for long." Ethan pushed the engines to their limit, feeling the vibrations rattle through the frame as the small transport surged forward. The blockade ships continued to drift apart under Nyla's control, creating a narrow gap, a single fragile path to freedom. "We're almost there," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Just a little longer." But then the council made their move. The comms crackled to life again, and the deep, cold voice of the council filled the cockpit. "Nyla, stop this rebellion. Return to us now, and you will not be harmed. The human cannot protect you. He is weak, and he will die. Do not make us destroy him." Nyla's eyes stayed closed, but tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered softly, "All my life I obeyed them. I believed their lies, but not anymore." The consul's voice grew harsher. "If you pass through that gate, you are no longer Veari. You will be hunted until the stars burn out." Enfen placed his hand over hers, grounding her, steadying her. "Then let them hunt us," he said. "We'll make our own path." Nyla opened her eyes, and in them, Ethan saw no fear now, only defiance. The engines screamed as the small transport shot forward, racing toward the narrow opening. Beams of energy streaked past them, drones swarmed from above, and the pursuing ships closed in fast. Every sensor in the cockpit blared warnings, "Hold it steady." Nyla shouted over the chaos, "I'm trying." Ethan yelled back, gripping the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. They tore through the shrinking gap between the blockade ships just as the council fired a full barrage. Explosions lit up the alien sky like falling stars, and their tiny vessel was caught in the shockwave, spinning wildly before Ethan managed to stabilize it. When the ship finally leveled out, they were past the blockade. Free. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit, broken only by their ragged breaths. Then Nyla laughed softly, a sound of disbelief and relief all at once. "We did it," she whispered. "We're really free." Ethan allowed himself a small smile, but he knew it wasn't over yet. "For now," he said, "but they'll come after us." Nyla nodded, wiping her tears. "Then we stay ahead of them, together." Ethan stared out at the endless stars beyond, feeling the weight of what they had done settling on his shoulders. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about something greater, the right to choose their own destiny, no matter what galaxy they were in. As they drifted into deep space, Nyla leaned back against her seat, exhaustion finally overtaking her. Ethan set a new course toward the uncharted systems beyond the council's reach. They didn't know what waited out there, dangers, allies, or more unknown civilizations, but it didn't matter, because for the first time in both their lives, the future was theirs. Far behind them, in the cold halls of the council palace, the council watched silently as reports flooded in. Dozens of ships destroyed, systems compromised, and an experimental human Veari bond now beyond their control. The consul turned to his advisors, his voice low and sharp. "Find them, no matter where they run, no matter what it costs. Bring them back." But Ethan and Nyla were already gone. Two souls bound together by love, rebellion, and the endless hope hidden in the vast darkness between the stars. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The end.